Big progress already underway. After Donald Trump threatened to impose heavy tariffs on both Mexico and Canada over illegal immigration, well, Mexico's president just announced that migrant caravans will no longer be permitted to reach the U.S. border. Wow. While also trying to save face by promising to retaliate with a trade war. My advice, unsolicited, to the president of Mexico, be careful what you wish for because you're going to lose badly. Meanwhile, Canada's far-left prime minister, we like to refer to him as little Justin Trudeau. He appears to be in a state of panic and is now promising to do whatever it takes to maintain a good relationship with the U.S. Take a look.
I had a good call with Donald Trump last night again. We obviously talked about laying out the facts, talking about how the intense and effective connections between our two countries flow back and forth. We talked about some of the challenges that we can work on together. It was a good call. This is something that we can do, laying out the facts, moving forward in constructive ways. This is a relationship that we know takes a certain amount of working on, and that's what we'll do.
Well, we have a new sheriff in town. That means it is time for our allies, our friends, to act like allies and friends. Securing our border is infinitely more difficult when Canada and Mexico refuse to secure their own borders.
Hey, what's going on? Looks like I got everything right this time when I started up. That's pretty good. Yo, what's up, Predator? How you doing, man? Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you again, dude. Happy Thanksgiving! Well, I guess that's not a British holiday, actually. I don't think so. Yeah, no. Thank you for being here. Once again, this dude does not leave me alone. Hold on a second. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Sorry about that. I need to just silence my phone when I'm on air, I think, from here on out. Sorry for the delay again. Like I said last time I talked about this, there's so much crazy junk going on right now. I'm not going to explain it every time it was just a struggle to get clips today, and a bunch of things went wrong, and it was just a crappy morning, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So I'll just leave it at that. And like I said, I'm not going to let that stop me from doing shows. You can expect me to be here every day. I'm just going to be occasionally late because, unfortunately, it's just it's been a difficult. It's just a difficult time for everything, and I probably should have gotten the hang of all the sort of programs and tools and things I was using before. I understood the audio end of everything, except for I just didn't understand the software end of everything as well as I should have. Today there was some problems with video transferring over but not audio and blah blah blah. So anyway, like I said, though, I'm going to be here every day, and just until I can guarantee I'm going to be here at a certain time, I'm not going to say I'm going to be here exactly at. I'm aiming for noon here, so which would be 3 o'clock on the East Coast, and about 8 o'clock around your time, Jay. I think 8 or 9 at noonish over here, or so. Yeah, I think it's 8 or 9. But anyway, the point is that I'm trying to aim for that time, but whether or not I make it, like yesterday, I thought for sure I was going to be on time. I was a little late, and that just pissed me off enough to be a big deal. But it was because I had everything ready by 8 o'clock in the morning yesterday, and I still couldn't pull it off. So it just goes to show you how dysfunctional everything is. But anyway, we got a lot to get through today, so I won't waste any more time with that. I'll just say that, as I said before, if something's going on and I'm not up by noon, I'll more than likely have something up on Twitter or X, whatever. I'll most likely have something up there before I go live, and it will be within the next couple hours or so. So don't worry, I'll be here, and you'll for sure be hearing from me. So because the most important thing for me is making sure I get the show to you guys regardless. I know I'm going to be late and I'm sloppy and blah, 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 but I want to get the show to you guys regardless. So, especially this one, because I've been talking about this one part of this for days now, the thing with the hopefully incoming FBI director and former member of Trump's cabinet, Kash Patel. But I also have another interesting, fun treat besides the border thing, because I do have some. I do have the clip that Mr. Trudeau, or excuse me, Prime Minister Trudeau, played before Canadians to. It's sort of just like everything else Justin Trudeau puts out. It's a big, happy sunshine and rainbows sort of view of how they're going to be doing this wonderful work to help Canadians. And I mean, honestly, I don't disagree with the message. It's just like, the insincerity that seems to be coming off of it is just so obviously strong. It's just like potently surrounding it. It just smells like it's coming off of my monitor when I see anyway. So yeah, I've got that. Plus, the most important part is I really wanted to highlight what it is that the Democrats are so afraid of and so against when it comes to Kash Patel. So I did a little poking around. Good, glad to hear it, man. I'm glad to hear you're doing good. We got to play some. We got to play some Tekken 8, man. I've been getting better. Claudio got buffed. I'm ready to go, man. Anyway, but yeah, I wanted to let you guys see unfiltered why they really, really don't want this nomination, and the best way to do that is to show you guys the. I talked about this before, and just go to it. The Senate Homeland Security. Well, not Homeland Security. It's the Senate Special Committee for Weaponization of Government, and the whistleblowers from the FBI who came forward to talk about they're basically being removed from active duty without pay, and when you have a security clearance, you are unable to seek a job in the private sector because they can't keep. Yo, Eddie Madison, what's going on, man? How you doing? So anyway, yeah, the entire hearing is the Democrats having a hissy fit about whether or not these are really whistleblowers, and whether or not they really are having valid complaints, and whether or not this is really something that they should be talking about, and blah 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 blah, and the other side going, are you listening to what these guys are saying? Like, it's incredible. So I have a few select clips to play from that, because it was over a year ago now when this hearing went down, and I think personally for me this was probably one of the most good man. This was probably one of the most impactful hearings I've ever heard, just because of the sheer gravity of the claims being made, and because of the fact that the response from the other side was just like, it was so obvious that they just didn't care, and that's been kind of like underlying, been easy to see that sort of dynamic for a long time, but this is the first time where there's open hostility, and especially the left side, who always is supposed to care about whistleblowers and supposed to care about government being kept in check and their responsibilities and all this, is going to bat for the FBI and for their abuse of First Amendment violations, and their abuse of Second Amendment violations, their abuse of Fourth Amendment violations. Like, so much stuff that they are like using tools that they aren't supposed to be using for these situations, coming up and being abused for. I mean, the FISA is just one thing, and that was mostly for Donald Trump and his administration. But this is against the American people. This was egregious. This is one of the agents, by the way, also, who was taking down license plate numbers of people in school board meetings who were raising concerns about the trans agenda at their school board meetings for their children. Which, by the way, if you don't remember what they were what was going on there, I have a soundboard clip for that. Just let's see if I can. Oh man, is that one not going to play? Nah, damn it. I don't think it is going to play. I could play the sound anyway, though, because I think I still have it. Yeah, here it is. So if you don't remember what was going on in the school board meetings, here it is. Oh, wait, oops. There we go. It's coming, I think. I got to play the MP3, so it's going to take a second, but it's worth it, trust me. It's worth it. Oh, nice. Marvel 2, yeah. You know what I've been playing? I've been playing... Oh, here we go. Oh, wait, there's no volume. Hold on. Okay, here we go. This was what was in the books in elementary schools around the country.
It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look so hot.
Yeah, so there you go. That's just a snippet of some of the wonderful information in schools and around America, and so you can see why parents might have a little bit of a concern over what their children were seeing. But anyway, but the FBI, of course, they got to make sure the parents aren't getting out of line, so they make sure they get their license plate numbers and find out, especially what party they belong to. Because God, if they belong to that horrible conservative party, or even worse, if they're Catholic, then geez, we got to make sure. You know. Anyway, yeah, that's we're gonna be going over that. But oh, and by the way, yeah, it's I've been playing Ultimate Marvel 3 with the character add-on pack, and because they just added War Machine yesterday. I mean, oh, he's good. So anyway, the problem is I suck at Marvel 3, and so I'm trying to find people around my skill level, which is very low. I believe it or not, I'm getting better at Guilty Gear. They actually have patched it to the point that it's actually playable now, and I'm not so bad, but that's not the point. Anyway, so we'll kick it off with, let's see, what I want to start with. Well, as we talked about yesterday, the whole border issue of what were we talking? The tariffs that were going to be put on Mexico and Canada. So it's like 25% tariff, which is definitely a pretty significant tariff on our two neighboring countries, which that would have been significant. And Donald Trump has frequently used the story of the financial aid that was going to. It wasn't Mexico. It was. I think it was a South American country. I don't think it was like a, like Central American or within the, like Cuba or Venezuela, any of the island territories or anything. I think it was, or it might have been. I can't remember exactly where it was. But the point is that, it was. Oh no, it was El Salvador. That's right. It was El Salvador. I think it was. They were about to. Export all these deport, not export, deport all these illegal gang members back to the home countries, and they were blocking the runway. They're making it so that the plane couldn't land that had all these inmates on it, and they call the president. And they're saying, "Hey, they're blocking the runway," and he calls the president up. The president gets on the phone and says, "Hey, what's going on? My plane that can't land. We're extraditing people back to your country, and these are people that have illegally crossed into ours, and we're deporting them back to your country. We're at their home country. What's going on here?" And they're like, "We don't want to take them. We don't want to take them." we can't take them. It's like, so Donald Trump's, he tells the story a lot. He's like, okay, all right, we'll take them back and we'll house them in our jails, but that means that you're going to have to pay a 100% tariff on any product that's coming into the country. And they're like, nah, you wouldn't do that. He's like, I will do it. Yep. And this guy was on the phone. It's not I think it wasn't actually the president himself. I think it was somebody else that was a chief official. So anyway, it's like, let me get right back to you, Mr. President. It's like, okay. And like he says like 2 minutes later, they called back and says, yes, sir, we'd be delighted to have MS-13 gang members being dropped back off into this country. That's fine. Go ahead and we'll clear the runway for you to make sure they can come right in. It's just much funnier when he tells the story, obviously, but it just gives you an idea of the lengths that certain countries will go to, because of course we've seen throughout history, including in the 80s with the Mariel boat lift that I've talked about before. When Cuba was about to go into a civil war, that people were allowed to go, including people that were in prisons. They were released and were allowed to. As a matter of fact, it's the opening of Scarface. To be honest, that's the opening scene. If you've ever seen the movie, is about the Mariel boat lift and all the people that were coming from Cuba to America, including once again people that had been in their prisons. Because Castro essentially was like, all right, this government is now under my control. This is the law, and anybody that doesn't want to be here, you have this amount of time to get out. And so this particular boat lift was one that had, it was so jam-packed. There were people just like standing without any space in between them. And it was a disaster. We had that was just before, or right in the middle of our own massive crime spike, and as well as during the crack cocaine epidemic of the 80s and early 90s, and it was just it was really just a recipe for a very bad situation. And so this time, to preempt anything before he gets into office, jeez. I'm sorry to hear that, man. Jesus Christ. Oh, yeah, geez, man. Geez, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Damn. And things on my end with my mom have been pretty up and down lately. She's been taking some new... she's been getting a new daily sort of treatment where she actually has to go in for it, but it's been helping. It's definitely been helping her, but it is kind of rough to always have to be going to the every day going in for the procedures. So it's kind of tough. But anyway, so back to the illegals. We talked about or we actually showed the clip yesterday with Tom Homan and Greg Abbott from Texas talking about their efforts to make sure that people are deported, and they are going to be utilizing. And this is another reason why the FBI is so important in this, because, people don't want the people that are here illegally but are just kind of not harming anybody and keeping to themselves. That they're worried about those people, and those people come to mind first. But to people like conservatives, people like Tom Homan and people who actually care about Homeland Security, they are first and foremost thinking about criminal gang members that have come across, the potential international terrorists that have come across, especially those people, members of the cartel who may have crossed, child sex traffickers and sex traffickers in general that have come across, and in particular also the 400,000, as I was talking about. I believe it's up to 400,000 now, children that have been completely lost and no one has any idea where they are. They're probably being trafficked for sex or for labor. We've heard the reports of children working in absolutely just despicable conditions that no one, like adults, would have a hard time working in, let alone a child would have ridiculous trouble working in. And I showed that clip yesterday, that 2-year-old girl who had walked across the border and was all by herself, a 2-year-old girl walking across the border. She has this little piece of paper in her hand and saying her parents are in the United States, and who knows if that's true or not, but hopefully that wasn't completely just a ruse. But as I've said before, the cartels, they'll often give people instructions with a number of things from excuse me, a number of things from where they need to go, who they need to report to, and because a lot of it is to be smuggled across the border or just to be allowed to cross the border. First of all, I mean, the cartels have controlled the border essentially since it's been opened, and if you're going to cross the border, you owe the cartels, period. And if you don't, they're either going to kill you or they're going to kill your family, one way or another. So a lot of times they don't have the money, and so when the cartels bring them over, they send them to a spot where one of their people will be putting them to work in something probably illegal and making sure that they pay off their debts so that they can make sure that their family back at home, which they're constantly reminded of, will be tortured and murdered, or whether they will be come after and killed as well. It's, the compassion argument got thrown out the window a long time ago. Anybody that's still arguing compassion is completely full of shit, and I'm tired of it. But yeah, this is the state of the situation, and so the fact that we have now, with reluctance, but definitely with, and this is why Donald Trump is such an effective leader. It doesn't matter. I don't care what the method is. I want to make sure that this situation is brought to an end. Now, I don't want to see anybody hurt. I don't want to see anybody innocent hurt, but I don't want to have any more of this kind of ridiculous, unchecked immigration going on in this country, and for Mexico and for Canada to just be like, well, this is the United States problem. Because, I mean, especially with Chinese immigrants that have come directly from mainland China who want to just sneak in without having to really worry about too much resistance. A lot of them go north instead of south. So they cross the Canadian border into the United States instead of the Mexican border to the United States. And people from other countries too, especially when it comes to countries that are like in the Middle East or in Africa or in different parts of Southeast Asia or wherever it might be. There's a lot of traffic that comes through there. There's a lot of people that cross illegally through the northern border. So the idea of having these people finally work alongside us and have them actually commit to working alongside us rather than just like basically allowing everybody to just stroll on through the country and they don't like the traffic, but that's one thing that has kind of helped facilitate the problem is that for 4 years now, as long as this administration has been in office, the countries that are anywhere along the way from South America and some of the countries in South America, through the Panama Canal, through Central America, through Mexico, all the way to the Mexican border, that's been a trail for migrants going through. I hate to say migrants, and I'll get to that in a second, but the illegal immigrants that have been trying to make their way north have been just like pouring through those countries and just at a constant pace. And some very poor countries, some very poor areas, and just quite frankly, some of the most desperate-looking people in the world are seen as these people from other countries are just walking through, and that's got to be a huge burden on not only them but their whole country as well. That you have these people that are just, you have no idea who they are, you have no idea where they came from, you have no idea if they're going to, maybe they're going to settle down here, which there are obviously some cases where people do end up not going all the way to the American border. Not a large amount, but some of them. And the amount of displacement of people from their country of origin to God knows where in the American territories has gone so far out of whack at this point that it's just like, I don't know how long or if ever the situation will be able to be completely fixed, because this is irreparable damage in a lot of cases that is going to cause a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma for decades now. Because I mean, you can't have 20 million people, over 20 million people, leave their home to go to another country, and all those people just coming through, especially one route. As a matter of fact, there was a reporter that was with who was he talking with? Oh, that's right, he was talking with Eric Weinstein. I don't know if anyone. Yeah, I'm sure people out there are probably familiar with Eric Weinstein, but the professor from college, he was refused to abide by the day where no whites were supposed to show up to campus, including white teachers, and he showed up anyway because he was going to teach his class, and he got chased off and was threatened and had people with baseball bats looking all over the campus for him, and police were basically doing nothing because they were being threatened too, and it was just a nightmare. That was how he first came into the public eye. But now, much like Jordan Peterson, as obviously not to the same degree of notoriety, but as someone who is very intelligent and very very knowledgeable in his own right, was privy to a guy who he knew had been studying the travel from the Darien Gap area to up through the Panama Canal, and how dangerous that particular trek is. Which that's a whole nother story. I'll maybe save for another day. But essentially, he was privy to the kinds of things that were going on in these journeys that people were taking from wherever their home country was to the United States. And he actually followed a good chunk of it with this guy that he knew for at least a distance from the Darien Gap to the Panama Canal. And he mentioned that it was actually really scary to see, in many cases, when they would set up camps for illegal immigrants from different countries, that there was always two different camps. There was one for just about every group around the world minus one, and then there was another one that was just for Chinese immigrants and no one else. And for the most part, he mentioned that when you went to the first kinds of camps with everybody, the people there had no problem just explain. They didn't care how illegal it is supposed to be. It's because obviously no one in America cares. So they would just say, "Yeah, I'm from Nicaragua. I'm from Saudi Arabia. I'm from Egypt. I'm from Turkey." Like, they didn't have any hesitation saying where they were from, why they're migrating. Of course, when they get to the border, they're told by the cartels that they have to say they're there for asylum because apparently, persecution is going on in almost every country around the world except for Mexico, Canada, and the United States, which, although maybe it is going on in Mexico because they can't stop there. I don't know. It is so stupid because that's not what asylum's for. But anyway, the other camp, by contrast, so this is the point, the camp that had the Chinese immigrants, they didn't want you within viewing distance of their camp. They were very, very strict with secrecy about people being anywhere near their camp. They didn't want anybody talking to people from their camp. They didn't want people, most certainly didn't want people photographing the camp but the interesting part is that there's all these signs along the way, and there's been a lot of photos taken of all these signs. that are there to instruct. They've been put up by nonprofits and different other organizations that are there to assist with people getting to the United States to break the law. But they essentially are written in all these different languages, because I'm sure that it's not even enough to cover all the people that are. Sometimes people speak languages that, quite frankly, no one in our country, or very few people in our country, even speak or know at all. But anyway, the signs are always written in a bunch of languages, and in Chinese is particularly one that is almost always on the same signs, but it's really frightening that everyone knows about this, and that's obvious proof that, hey, they don't mind if you're Chinese, they don't mind where you're from, they don't mind what's going on at all. They just are gonna help get you there. And so that's it'll be very comforting once as the intro clip shows, people are finally kind of starting to be optimistic about the situation here, that it looks like, because with the exception of a couple positions, as I said yesterday, Donald Trump's cabinet is already getting pretty filled pretty quick, and that's why, and as I'll demonstrate pretty soon, that's why Kash Patel is somebody we definitely would really highly value as somebody who is going to be coming in as the FBI director, because once again, FBI Director Christopher Wray is like, we've kind of had enough. I forgot to mention the most egregious example of his dereliction yesterday, which was he was trying to keep it vague in the way he was talking to congressmen in this discussion, but he was talking about how he had a flight he had to catch at such and such time, so he couldn't be there for a second round of questioning, and yada yada yada. Next hearing that he comes in for, it's been found out that he was taking the FBI's private jet to go on vacation with his family, and that was the big important thing he had to leave for. And now he explained away the private jet part, that he's required to use the private jet. Because of course, if he wasn't required to do that, I'm sure he'd be flying coach just like the rest of us. He's a people's person. He's a people's people. But no, he tried to explain away that I'm required to use the FBI plane whenever I travel and pay for the expenses of it, blah blah blah. Well, yeah, but unfortunately that's not the point. The point is, this is an oversight hearing of the United States Senate that's here to do their job of law enforcement agencies, of which yours is a part of, and of which yours has been highly, highly questionable lately in their methods of conducting their investigations, and in what categories, where suddenly, all of a sudden, according to this administration, the number one threat to American homeland is what was it? White conservative men, I think, is the main, or white Christian men. It was one or the other. That's the number one terror threat. Is that, so got to watch out for all those suicide bombing white Christians and the suicide bombing Jews too. Apparently, there's a lot of terrorist threats coming from those groups. Believe me. But anyway, it's just, how many times do you have to hear bullshit from these people before you're ready to just say enough is enough? But anyway, so let's get to let me see real quick. Never mind. Hopefully, if you guys are watching on YouTube, there's not too bad a stuttering going on. I don't know. It looks like there was a little bit of a hiccup that was going on. Oh, is it because... Hang on. I think I know what it might be. And I'll make sure oh, it's fine now. It's connected. It must have been some kind of crazy hiccup. But it looks like it's all right. It's getting good connection again. So anyway, so I'm going to play, real quick, just one thing. I'm going to play Justin Trudeau's actual official statement to Canada, at least as much of it as I can stomach. And because it's mostly just, you know, what would you call it? It's mostly just like self-congratulatory, you know, hyping up of this great action that they're going to do to make sure that Canada is safer from, and it is. I mean, if it were genuine, I'd be kind of pleasantly surprised. But it just seems more like a same old. Because I mean, Pierre Poilievre has been kicking his ass and in so many meetings of their. Oh my God! Get out of here! Leave me alone. Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and play this, and I mean, this guy looks like he's like a teenage YouTuber trying to shoot a video for his vlogging channel in this. So I mean, you'll see what I mean in just a second. But yeah, this is kind of a joke. But it is kind of funny. So, yeah, so let me pull this up real quick and we'll get to it. And then I'll kind of break it down on the other end because it's really just propaganda. But at the same time, there's going to have to be some kind of action because, I mean, there's no way that Donald Trump's not going to enforce this once they actually bring it to the point of putting the tariffs potentially in place to actually tariff goods coming in from Canada or Mexico. And President Sisi of Mexico. Oh wait, that's from Egypt. Yeah, never mind. In case you don't know, that was a reference to President Biden and the fact that he mixes up world leaders all the time. But anyway, by the way, I still haven't played it, but I have to play the clip of him just wandering off into the jungle at some point. That's just it's reached meme status already, and it's just pretty much at a point where it's one of those classic Biden clips that there's so many good classic Biden clips, and it's. I swear, long after he's left office, there's going to be so many good. That's going to be his most important contribution to the country, I think, is how long people are going to meme on Biden and his style, shall we say, of performing his duties as president. Anyway, let's get to, where is this thing? It's right here. Okay. All right, so this is Justin Trudeau with his vlog to Canada. So here we go. We'll go back. Oh, I forgot to turn the camera back on this. Oh, that's right, I got to do it here. There we go. All right, and then I gotta pull this up, and there we go. Okay, now we'll do this. Oh, there we go. Oh, no volume. Sorry.
It's growing really fast, like baby boom fast, and increasingly.
Okay.
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population is growing really fast, like baby boom fast. And increasingly, bad actors like fake colleges and big chain corporations have been exploiting our immigration system for their own interests. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years. Today, I'm going to let you in on what happened, where we made some mistakes, and why we're taking this big turn.
So you see what I mean, right?
Two kinds of immigration in Canada. The one you probably think of
you
most
just can't
is
take him
permanent
seriously because he's
immigration,
so goofy.
when families come to Canada to settle and call it home. Every year, the government determines the right number of permanent residents that we want to admit. That's how it's been done for decades. But a plan that only talks about permanent immigration misses the other pathway. temporary immigration. Temporary residents are people who come to Canada for a limited time, like international students, temporary workers, and so on. They come to work a job or go to school. When the job is done or when they finish their degree, most return home. Some apply to stay as permanent residents, but most return home. So back to this year's plan. Historically, Canada's annual immigration plan just looked at permanent residents. The number of temporary students and workers that we admitted each year was left to the demands of the economy. It was usually a small proportion of our population, so it's never been a part of the long-term immigration plan. But after the pandemic, our economy came roaring back quickly, and we needed a lot of workers fast.
Canada is in the middle of a huge labor shortage.
Temporary foreign workers became such a significant part of our workforce that it'd be a mistake not to include them when we plan our immigration levels. So this year, we did exactly that for the first time.
Or maybe, rolling back some of the restrictions like vaccine mandates and
temporary residents. This way, we're getting the full breakdown of people coming into our country so we can prepare the homes and infrastructure needed to support them. Like I said, immigration is based on demand. When we set our targets, we look at every province and territory. We ask the premiers, what are the gaps in your workforce? Is your population growing or getting older? We field calls from businesses, CEOs, economic experts, all sharing their thoughts on where we should set our targets.
We've had a chronic shortage of labor for the last decade. It is the #1 issue of all manufacturers across Canada.
Oh, and by the way,
so
in
we
Canada,
think there needs to be more, push the pedal to the floor
unlike in
to
the
bring
United
more people
States,
into Canada.
all media is entirely government controlled. So, yeah. That's why when the trucker protests were going on,
It's no surprise that every sector has different wants and needs when it comes to immigration. But after the pandemic, they all came to us with the same message. After 2 years with closed borders, we need more people, more workers, fast. So we brought in more workers, and it was the right choice. It worked. Our economy grew. Restaurants and stores reopened, businesses kept running, but most importantly, in spite of lots of economists' predictions, we avoided the worst-case scenario, a recession. But some saw that as an opportunity to profit, to game the system. We've seen way too many large corporations doing this.
Yes, the leftist talking point of large corporations. It's always their fault.
Far too many colleges and universities used international students.
Although in this case,
their
this
bottom
is
line.
actually something true, and it is happening in the United States too. I'll mention that in a second.
That are just churning out diplomas. There is fraud and abuse, and it needs to end.
Because they could charge these students tens of thousands of dollars more for the same degree. And then there
It's a little
are
different
really
in this
bad
country,
actors
but
who
it's
outright
similar.
Exploit people, who target vulnerable immigrants with promises of jobs, diplomas, and easy pathways to citizenship, promises that would never come true. Looking back, when the post-pandemic boom cooled and businesses no longer needed the additional labor help, as a federal team, we could have acted quicker and turned off the taps faster.
Now, it is time to make the adjustments to stabilize the immigration system.
Well,
we
anyway,
need
that's
to get it
about
working
where
right
he's.
for
Yeah,
Canadians for
we got
right
about.
now.
Immigration is primarily a federal job.
So yeah, entirely. So anyway, so he's partly telling the truth, which is actually an improvement from normal Justin Trudeau, but in this case, there's also a few holes in that story. Like I said, the #1 being that you had workers, you just didn't want them because they weren't fully vaccinated, and then when they protested about that, you used the police force like a military police to round them all up and close their bank accounts and do. I mean, it was just ridiculous. That was one of the most horrific stories that came out of Canada in a long time. But that was just kind of showing the power mad side of Justin Trudeau and his sort of narcissistic belief that he's the one that needs to be in power and he knows what's best for Canada. But there is some truth to at least some of that. Like, for example, when it comes, as I was saying, the colleges, we have a similar problem here, but it's a little different because it's and it's not just colleges. There's colleges and there's also even police departments. There's businesses that are all specifically going back to Chinese immigrants, all handled by Chinese immigrants, mostly illegal Chinese immigrants. A lot of them have to do with farming and agriculture, and a lot of them are honestly most likely here by someone who's in a position of some kind of authority to grant the right permits and to look past all the potential danger there is in not just worker violations and conditions that they're working in, but also just the fact that a lot of these people are here to steal intellectual property, to steal different sorts of technologies or different sorts of patents or different kinds of whatever they can get that they will be able to bring back to mainland China, because these people are essentially, I mean, the CCP is still one of the biggest threats to not just the United States, but to Western culture in general, and it's mostly through informational warfare, but also through the ability for them to, for example, let's take the colleges that we're talking about in the United States for the Confucius Institutes. These are all just Chinese indoctrination camps, essentially, and they sort of teach communist Chinese propaganda, and most of these are only, filled with students who are illegal Chinese immigrants. But I mean, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're national citizens for the United States that are still going to these colleges anyway. There's a lot of different schemes that they're exploiting. And so that's really the main threat in the United States. I don't know the groups in Canada that are necessarily doing that sort of thing, but the larger concern isn't just that. It's also the fentanyl that is coming, because the precursor materials come from China, and a lot of it goes to Mexico. But as I said, a lot of cartel members have come across the border, or because the cartels hire a lot of obviously Hispanic street gangs that are usually kind of like the foot soldiers, essentially, for their enterprises, to make sure that that people get paid on time, and that the product is getting out to the right dealers and distributors, and everything else is, it's run very, very efficiently. But the actual precursor materials to make fentanyl tablets and make fentanyl that is distributed is almost all coming from China. And that's definitely not by coincidence either, because we've obviously complained to China many times that we got to stop sending this stuff over here. But of course, this administration wasn't going to do a damn thing about it, because they were allowing the Chinese to lecture them about how our country was too racist or something. I don't even remember. It was too bigoted. Yeah, that's rich coming from China. There's way too much. There's way too much shit we put up with from that kind of thing, and so once again, when it comes to the deportations, these are things that have probably come after the first batch of deportations, where it's the most dangerous people, the people that are potential terrorists, people who have criminal records, especially murder or rape or any kind of violent crime, and hopefully also anybody that has anything to do with hopefully finding the 400,000 children that are missing, and anyone who is doing anything abusive to children and getting them the fuck out of here. But I would imagine next is going to be the sort of more undercover sabotage type immigrants that are here to undermine the United States by other means other than just physical and violent means, and actually doing it ways that are more economic or technological. And another big worry is, of course, we allowed that spy balloon to fly across the entire continent of the United States that had clear view, and as a matter of fact, the route it followed intentionally seemed to just so happen to coincide with a number of military installations. Gee, I wonder why. It was just it was a complete disgrace that we essentially allowed it to get all the way from coast to coast, and then that's when we shot it down. And of course, we shot it down. We didn't use some kind of other means to pull it down to see what kind of technology was actually on board. And it says it all that the first shot missed. So it's you got a state of the art military grade fighter plane that uses its first missile and misses, and then its second missile hits. Not to knock the Air Force, but good Lord, it just is a symbol for exactly how ridiculous I mean, when it comes to China, this administration and this military is that's another problem too, is that once again, we've had our military entirely focused on DEI and diversifying our military. Unfortunately, I don't think China is doing the same thing. I don't think they're too worried about the number of transgender members in their military. I don't think they're particularly too concerned about how many black people are in their military, or quite honestly, how many women to men ratio is in their military. I think they're concerned with their military being big and powerful, and basically ready to kick anybody's ass as soon as they need to. And that was what our military used to be geared at. But now, when you have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, as I've said before, talking about how he wants to understand white rage, and you have the Secretary of Defense discussing how important equity is in military, you've got a very serious problem on your hands with how you're running your actual armed forces. And on top of all of that, we're missing recruitment numbers by huge numbers, because not only are these people feeling like, I don't want to get involved, these are families that have had generation after generation traditionally serve in the military because of their devotion to the country, who are now saying, yeah, I wouldn't join if I were you. It's just a joke at this point. It's about pronouns and all this other horse shit. And then the other reason is, of course, that well, to put it this way, well, let me see, what's the best way to put it? The type of treatment that the military is getting from like the actual military soldiers, not to mention the fact that deployed troops that are put in harm's way, that are actually out there in the field. There was Afghanistan. There was the more recent incidents near Iran and near the territories where Israel has been being attacked, and it's an incident where one of our bases was hit, and several servicemen and women were killed in that strike, and several more wounded. And it's just like, and there was no response. There was no retaliation. What are we doing? We're sitting there. We're just putting our troops there. Why? What's the point? And my point with Israel has been, it's been very different than that from Ukraine, because first of all, unlike Ukraine, we haven't spent, like hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars on Israel's defense that is likely being funneled off and is skimmed off the top by their most wealthy individuals in the country to be smuggled in to buy a new yacht or something. And on top of that, they also have only asked for funds for things like, once again, we've sort of consistently been funding Iron Dome because it's a defensive system. Obviously, I've talked about that before. It's not a system built to do any kind of damage to any. I mean, it can't target individual people, or it can't target a country. It can't target. It doesn't target. It targets incoming missiles. And so we've funded Iron Dome, and we've also sent some funding and resources for them to maintain their ability to continue fighting. But their requests have been modest by comparison, and they've been very few and far between, as opposed to Zelensky showing up in the United States Congress and once again, like 4 times, coming in and giving these impassioned speeches about democracy and about how it's imperative that we give them the money to continue their struggle for freedom, because it's not just a donation, it's a investment in the global democracy that we all believe in and share. And by the way, this is coming from a guy who shut down all opposition parties and all opposition candidates, as well as halted the election in the country because of the war. You can't have an election because there's a war going on, so no democracy for the moment. As well as arrested priests and other clergymen who have been members of specific churches that they believe are connected to Russians, and that are, obviously, as far as anybody knows, none of them have direct contact over. They're not in direct contact with Russia. They're not contacting Russians with information. They're not double agents. They're not saboteurs. They're not doing anything like that. They are, in fact, just a religion within the country that had the same rights as every other religion until the war started, and then they started getting arrested by Zelensky and his fellow soldiers, and then his fellow countrymen. And once again, this is the democracy that is so important that we keep propping up. One that has postponed elections, shut down opposition parties, shut down opposition media, so no newspapers, no articles, no ads, no television for anybody critical of Zelensky. And, of course, has gone into the churches and gone after anybody that is a member of these specific churches. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And they want to criticize Bibi Netanyahu for his murder of... as I talked about the other day, I'll have to go into detail about this later, but the ICC targeting Bibi Netanyahu for war crimes because, he hasn't done anything to help. But yeah, I seem to remember, every time they do a strike, him doing everything from sending text messages to sending in radio broadcasts, sending in planes literally dropping off leaflets with warning messages that this area is going to be the target of a operation from Israel within the next 2 days. So anyone who is not affiliated with Hamas, or who is not affiliated with a terrorist organization attempting to attack Israel, you have the warning of the Israeli government to flee the area. And it's pretty much doing everything you can to make sure that you do what you can to warn the population that, we believe that Hamas is going to be in this area. We believe that they're going to embed themselves with the normal other members of the population. We don't want anyone there to be hurt who is not a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer. And on top of all that, most importantly, our main goal is to get back our hostages first and foremost. So So really, once again, none of that's talked about anymore. It was talked about for like the first couple of weeks, and now they dropped that. And then the worst of all is that, like the reports of everything that we have as far as data coming out over people who have been killed in Palestinian territories, excuse me, is all those numbers come from Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, same thing, and from places like Iran and other groups that either are terrorist organizations or fund terrorist organizations in the area. I wouldn't exactly say those are the most reliable numbers. Now, there's no doubt whatsoever that unfortunately many innocent people have been killed, and I don't like that part at all any more than anybody else does. But one thing needs to be made clear. We've known this from the start. I've talked about the aid packages that have been sent and the reason why that's not enough for the people of Gaza or the people of Palestine, because it goes straight to Hamas. But one thing I haven't really talked too much about is the fact that this whole thing, everything that is everything that we hear coming out from there is meant to stir up public outrage amongst the rest of the population. That's why you don't hear a death toll count coming out of Israel every day. You don't hear about casualties and people who've been killed in Israel. You don't even hear about how many rocket strikes continue to go down in Israel. I swear it's and God forbid they talk about the fact that it was long before the war. It was long before October 7th. That I mean, we're talking years now where almost on a daily basis rockets were coming in from Gaza to Israel over and over again, because Hamas has consistently launched rockets from behind civilian areas. I've talked about this part, but now all of a sudden, because the war's going on, now people are talking about the rocket attacks, but they look at the failed rockets because, once again, so when we send money or we send material for them to build infrastructure like metals and things like that, what they do is Hamas takes all that stuff and makes weapons out of them in any way they can, usually just junk slapped together in the most primitive way possible to make a barely functioning rocket and rocket launch pad setup that is put in an area that is, once again, right behind a heavily populated area. And before, when their rockets would fail and land on people in their own territory, it was just not talked about. Now they talk about it all right, but they blame Israel's strikes on these failed rocket attacks. And it's, once again, like, this is why all the information we're getting, you have to take very skeptically, because it's not, I wouldn't call Hamas or Iran reliable sources. I'm sorry, not when we're talking about war statistics. And on top of that, like, no one in Hamas or in Iran has talked about how their main goal is to get back the hostages in Israel, or their own citizens that are suffering in Israel, or anything like that, because Israel doesn't take hostages. They take prisoners of war, and they take enemy combatants as prisoners of war, and basically following the rules of conflict, as well as the fact that, once again, they were the ones that were struck. They were the ones that were attacked because they realized their crappy rockets weren't doing anything, so they needed to go in and really send a message, which they most certainly did. And now that they're bearing the brunt of that, now everybody needs to feel sorry for them. And I do feel sorry for the people, because they were they were hoodwinked by a totalitarian, well, not totalitarian, a fanatical religious terrorist organization that has, for years and years and years, been making it very clear their agenda ultimately is to destroy Israel and the United States, both and Western culture in general, as the little Satan in their words, Judaism, and the big Satan in their words, Christianity. They want those gone and wiped off the face of the earth. That's what jihad is. So I mean, you can feel the sympathy for the people of Palestine. That's totally understandable. But to place blame, like I know there's a lot of information out that paints a very bad light on Bibi Netanyahu. Now I don't know how much of it is true. I'm sure some of it is. But once again, find me a world leader, any world leader that's hands are clean. Like, tell me which one, because I've still yet to see one. I don't think we will ever see one that is a completely clear-conscienced leader of any territory. And that's what leaders have blood on their hands, all leaders. However, I think there's a difference between attempting to strike at people who are trying to kill you and going into a country that is not doing any kind of military operation against you and going into their civilian populated areas, torturing them, killing them, raping them to the point that a mother's child is thrown in an oven while she is raped and her child is cooked alive in the oven. And she's getting raped in front of it, and the guys are laughing about it. I don't care. Fuck you people. This is ridiculous. And they say that didn't happen. Nobody was raped. Yeah, none of them raped, except that girl whose pants were bloody as fuck as you were moving her from the trunk to the inside of the car. Yeah, nobody was raped. Nobody was raped. Nobody was hurt, except the girl that you also threw in the truck that was buck naked, whose leg was so disjointed you could barely hold her up with it. Sorry. It gets me a little pissed off when people just focus on the poor Palestinian people. Yeah, I agree. The poor Palestinian people. You know why? Because of these monsters in Hamas. That's why. Piss me off. Anyway, I better get off that before I go too off the rails. Anyway, so let's get to the other subject for today, and we'll try and kind of muscle through this real quick. So this is the interview with Kash Patel I was talking about. This is on Mornings with Maria. This was on Sunday, and once again, this is the guy who is hopefully going to be nominated. This is one of the few people that people are talking about as one of the considered people for Trump's picks for the director of the FBI. And the reason is because he knows very well the intricacies. He was there for the FISA abuses, the targeting of Trump's campaign, and the abuse of the courts and the justice system and Congress and the Senate to try and push a narrative that Putin had influenced Donald Trump to basically assisted in electing Donald Trump by doing something to make the population vote more for. I don't remember all the details, but they used that dossier, which was bought and paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign, to smear Donald Trump and make it seem like he was in this close-knit relationship with the Kremlin and that they were going to help him get elected and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, he was there for all of this stuff. He knows exactly what's going on. And most importantly, when it comes to the big, the big one, January 6th. He knows all the details about what was attempted to be accomplished on that day. And one reason why we still know so little, which, by the way, it's kind of known, at least at this point, that one of the reasons is because there were several confidential human sources or undercover agents from the FBI that were in the crowd on January 6th, dressed as Trump supporters. And what we don't know is, did they assist in starting the breach of the Capitol? Were they any of the people who were really agitating the crowd to get more and more hostile? We know the Ray Epps story, as we've talked about before, but what else was going on? Well, here's the clip that is of the interview with Kash Patel, and you can kind of tell from this interview why they really don't want him as the director of the FBI. But anyway, here's that clip. So let's get this up and running. And then I'll play a couple of clips from that congressional hearing like I was talking about.
Well, there you go. That's former Florida Attorney General and newly named U.S. Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi, predicting accountability for those who attacked President Trump unfairly in the past 10 years. If confirmed, the incoming Attorney General could oversee and lead that accountability after a decade of political dirty tricks against President Trump, beginning with the Russia collusion lie and related surveillance of candidate and then President Trump. This past week, FBI Director Christopher Wray and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas failed to show up for a planned public hearing into worldwide threats, instead offering to speak only behind closed doors. The FBI and DHS claiming that both officials have testified publicly many times, and any further information.
Just one thing. As I said, they've testified a few times with answers that don't answer anything and condescending bullshit. They've testified a lot.
Should be provided in a classified setting. That drew sharp rebuke from the Senate Homeland Security Committee chairman and Michigan Democrats.
And by the way, this really surprised me because this dude is a true blue Democrat. Like, he's a regular Democratic guy. He's pretty much in line with most of the nominations that came from this administration. But at the bare minimum, he is at least responsible enough as a chairman to recognize we have the responsibility of oversight, and the people that we need to hold accountable need to show up for our hearings, period. As I talked about just a minute ago about Christopher Wray and taking off early because he had to go get on his plane and go on vacation. Once again, now him and Mayorkas have just decided, we're just not going to show up.
Senator Gary Peters, who said in part, their claims that they can only relay such information and respond to questions in a classified setting are entirely without merit. Joining me now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is former Department of Defense Chief of Staff Kash Patel, who is reportedly on President-elect Trump's shortlist to become the next director of the FBI. Kash Patel, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Your reaction to what you just heard from Pam Bondi, incoming, perhaps, next U.S. Attorney General?
President Trump received a constitutional mandate from the American people in the executive branch, in the House of Representatives, and the United States Senate. His selection of Pam Bondi to be the Attorney General and nominate her shows you his dedication and commitment to that constitutional mandate. Pam Bondi is a fantastic nominee to represent and restore the Constitution. And we'll talk about threats overseas in a minute, but let's talk about the problems facing Washington and America right now. The fact that you have leaders of the Department of Homeland Security, the Department Department of Justice and FBI failing to show up to Congress is a constitutional violation of their duties. I want constitutional representatives like Pam Bondi to be appointed and Senate confirmed, and I don't want them to forget that on day one. She won't. I want them to remember that the FBI, the DOJ, the DOD report to the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives, and that commitment continues throughout their entire tenure. And I don't want any more Washington speak about we can't talk about this or we can't talk about that. The American people deserve courage and commitment and constitutional oversight, and that's what President Trump is going to deliver. Nice. And I just want people to show up to the United States Senate unequivocally, whoever is named in whatever position, and say, we work for you and you work for the American people.
Cash, I know you've been a student of all of this for many, many years, with all of your roles, including the Chief of Staff of the Department of Defense. I want to get your take on what former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe said about you. He targeted you specifically, saying that you would be dangerous. No part of the FBI's mission is safe with Kash Patel in any position of leadership in the FBI, and certainly not in the Deputy Director's job. From Andrew McCabe. Your reaction?
I couldn't care less about.
Well, look, my 16-plus years in government service as a public defender, as a national security prosecutor, as a civilian in Joint Special Operations Command, leading President Trump's counterterrorism missions, taking out Baghdadi, returning hostages, serving as his Deputy Director of National Intelligence, and lastly, as Chief of Staff. The only thing I was beholden to was the United States Constitution. And yes, I was a lead investigator where we exposed the Russiagate crimes that Comey, McCabe, Strzok, and Page, and so many others committed. And we reported to Congress those oversight matters, and those were taken up through them in the right course to the American people. So if anyone has a complaint about that and questions my unwavering commitment to the Constitution, I'm happy to talk to them about it. I'm especially happy to talk to the media about it. But you can look at my record, and those calling me a danger, let's just ask them for a proof, a piece of evidence that actually shows I've committed any constitutional violations or any ethical quandaries, and I'd love to hear their response to this.
Yeah, it's interesting because all of this, when they were saying Russia, Russia, Russia with President Trump, they were actually missing what was a serious danger, and that was Communist China. And I know you've also done extensive work on the threat of Communist China. Talk to us about that in terms of what you see as the most important threats facing this nation right now.
It dovetails what we were talking about. These leaders of DOD, the IC, and everywhere else have to report back to the Senate their findings and revolve around their budgets and make sure that we are attacking our adversaries. So it's threefold for me. It's the CCP, it's Russia, and it's Iran. And it's what they're doing in space, especially that is concerning. They have taken a leap. Remember, people were laughing at President Trump when he created the Space Force. He did that brilliantly and with foresight. And what we need to do is take on the orbital landscape above the Earth's atmosphere and make sure we have the technology based on Elon Musk and company to take on these threats, the cyber capabilities they are doing to us. The CCP is inundating us with public companies, and also the sub-oceanic efforts that Russia and the CCP are undertaking must be at the top of the list, in my opinion, to take on so that we don't have a crushing defeat in our electrical grid infrastructure, and also that we protect the American people. And lastly, Iran. They are the world state sponsor of terror. They cannot have a nuclear weapon, and President Trump's mandate to remove them from the JCPOA and make sure they don't have access to the global banking system is something he needs to work with Congress on again to make sure our allies and adversaries align with the no-fail mission of the United States of America.
Well, and all of these things, you're just touching on some of the issues that we talk about, but I'm glad that you went to space there. But what about some of the other practical things that we've seen no response whatsoever? Continued intellectual property theft, a cover-up of COVID, fentanyl coming through our southern border. All of this, Communist China,
and we
really haven't seen any response. Iran, the same thing. They had, efforts to kill President Trump, and yet no response from the Biden administration. I was told that, in fact, is an act of war. Again, he didn't respond to it until just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, right now is, I think, in my opinion, the most dangerous time, the sort of lame duck period, where the president is not acting in the capability that needs to defend this nation. And what we need to do is have our leaders of the agencies and departments that were confirmed by the Senate show up and do their job and tell the Senate and the House of Representatives, these are our failures, these are our weaknesses, we need help, we need you to respond in this time of need. And those guys not showing up to the Hill and just deflecting their responsibilities shows us how much more danger we are in. We know what President Trump's going to do, but he's 54 days away from taking the oath of office. Right now, we need the United States of America to remind those agencies and department leaders that they work for us, and the mandate that President Trump was given was to protect our borders, to make sure CCP fentanyl doesn't kill our children, to end the forever wars, to return our hostages, and make sure American global diplomacy is in great hands when President Trump ascends to the Oval Office on January 20th. And we must respect the will and power of Congress. I cannot stress that enough. The constitutional oversight responsibilities of the United States House of Representatives and the Senate has been lost by the leaders of the deep state in Washington, D.C. And I think President Trump is going to restore that with his selections and his nominees.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the public has also lost trust in a number of these agencies. Kash, how do you believe Americans will regain trust in our most important law enforcement agencies?
One thing: exposure of corruption. Put out the documents, put out the evidence. We only have gotten halfway down the Russiagate hole. The people need to know that their FBI is restored by knowing full well what they did to unlawfully surveil them. The people need to know that there has been a de-weaponization, a defanging of the Department of Justice, and their houses of worship will no longer be raided. But they need to be shown the documents that said this was the reasoning they weaponized justice. And that, in my opinion, is how Congress can most importantly secure the trust, or resecure the trust, of these agencies and departments. President Trump is taking a huge first step with his monumental victory. Now it's up to Congress and the Senate to work with his leaders at DOJ and FBI to put out those documents. And I think DOJ goes a long way in that, but we're going to need cabinet secretaries who say, we don't fear the corruption that preceded us. It will make us powerful if we expose it to the American public.
All right, Kash, it's great to have you this morning. We'll be watching. Thanks very much for joining me.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian.
That gives you a good idea, and I can tell you right now, that is, you know how the Democrats have been freaking out still since the loss of the election. This is the main reason why. And what I mean is that, like, guys like Kash Patel and even the fact that he has gone so far as, Trump has gone so far as to say, we're going to establish this new Department of Government Efficiency. We're going to start unsealing all of these classified documents that have been sealed from the public for decades now, like the JFK assassination and like things around what are they called? They're not called UFOs anymore. They have a new name for them now, and I can't remember what it is. But stuff about that, stuff about we still don't know very much about Epstein. We don't know anybody barely at all that was in his black book. We don't know anything about his murder, or it was definitely pretty much guaranteed to be a murder at this point. We don't know, as Kash said, we still don't even know that much about Russiagate. We don't know all the players that were involved. We don't know why, this was gone over with the Durham report, but one of the main people involved was unable to be located by John Durham and his team, and they're pretty frustrated with him because of that. But once you get to a point where you're a what would you call that? A special, or what's it called? The investigate. I can't remember the name of the title, but anyway, you're investigating this situation, and there's only so much you can do, especially when a lot of these people are not American citizens. They're Australian citizens. They're British citizens. They're Christopher Steele, who wrote the document, was a British former MI6 agent. So, I mean, there's all kinds of... I mean, it sounds crazy, but this is all the people that were involved, and we know pretty much at this point that it was the Hillary Clinton campaign that paid for the document. I mean, we know that much, but we don't know all of the people involved. We don't know who was responsible for what and what kind of money changed hands, and et cetera, et cetera. But, when it comes to the local people involved, we kind of have a good idea of how they were involved and to what extent. But the foreign people involved, that's a different situation. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, luckily, and this is one of the things that has been really, finally justice was actually served to some extent. You'll never get the time back, but Julian Assange was released, which is just amazing, because if he had to face any kind of extradition to the U.S. or anything like that, there would have been major trouble. But they still hate Assange. They despise Assange. They despise Trump. They despise Kash Patel. And I was going to play a few clips, but maybe I'll just play one, because, man, once again, I'm going long on these. I might have to do 2 hours for my streams coming up, because I'm ending up pushing it pretty hard. But anyway, let me just see if I can find one that's a good example of what this hearing was like, because this was a circus, just like a lot of the more controversial hearings are a circus. But this one in particular was really bad, and the reason it was so particularly bad is the situation of the guys that were there as whistleblowers. These are former FBI agents. These are agents that were there for decades, or at least, 15, 16 years, some of them. And a couple of them former military, former various degrees of law enforcement. They had been awarded medals and had been recognized by the agencies and by Congress and by the United States government as exemplary and model, basically going above and beyond in the line of duty. And here now they're being treated like they're traitors and excommunicated from the FBI with no pay and no ability to apply for another job, and no ability to make money above a certain amount every year. And you bet your ass they were watching their funds, because that's essentially why. Maybe if I can find the one that's the right length, then we can go over the one that has well, this is kind of part of it, but there might be a better one. How long is that one? Oh, that's yeah. Oh, whoops, wrong thing. No. Well, it's kind of out of order, but I'll try and play. Maybe I'll just play a part of this, because the most important. Yeah, you know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll play the first half of this, because after that it goes backwards, kind of. I don't know why this clip is out of order this bad, but it starts off with because I'll just say it right now. Everyone's favorite congressman, and of course mine, Dan Goldman, is that's where the title of the episode comes from. Credibility matters, and it sure does, because I would say the credibility of Dan Goldman is about somewhere in the stage of in the toilet and being flushed, and somewhere in the middle there. But anyway, the point is that he's attempting to kind of smear the agents for their something involving their judgment in each situation. When you look at the history of these agents in the field, in their particular roles within the FBI, and once again, these were exemplary agents. There was nothing at all in their file that said anything about them being difficult for the agency, or rogue, or not playing by the rules, or doing things sloppily, or anything like that. They're sort of by the book kind of agents, especially Steve Friend. He went into a lot of detail about that in the the interview he did with Patrick Bet-David. But yeah, this is Dan Goldman going through a list of course, he mentions Kash Patel, and as I said, these guys were just abruptly just shit canned by the FBI, told yep, see ya, nope, you're not wanted here, get out. And because of the fact that you can once you have a security clearance, if you're a member of a government agency, and they, especially something like the FBI, where it's a high level of authority that you're granted in that position, and you get let go under circumstances where they just, at this point, just are suspended, more or less, not completely fired, but suspended without pay, and you're not allowed to seek employment anywhere else because you hold your security clearance. It's basically a combination of both punishing the person who did the deed, and serves as a warning to anybody else who might go against their established, sort of new rules they're trying to enforce. Because, hey, you got a problem looking into people that were here on January 6th? Well, then you can, let's just remind you about what happened to Garrett O'Boyle. He flew down here from Wisconsin to Quantico in Washington D.C. area, and well, he couldn't get his stuff for a couple weeks, and we essentially made sure that that he was going to have real trouble when he. It's really despicable, especially. I don't think it's discussed in this clip, but he had a 2-week-old baby with him. His children were all, under the age of 12, I believe. One of them might have been 12, but they certainly weren't even in their teens. And the youngest was a 2-week-old baby that just moved, and now they had no money, and very little money, and he'd been suspended without pay for an indefinite amount of time. No one knows how long he's going to be kept off, but considering the situation, it's going to probably be a while. You get somebody who gives you a donation because he understands the corruption of the FBI, and lo and behold, then you got some sanctimonious prick like Dan Goldman coming in and accusing you of something even more, once again, because it's Kash Patel and he's evil and he supports Donald Trump and blah, blah, blah. Fuck these people. Anyway, so I'll play this one, and then we'll go over that briefly and call it a day, and we'll say Happy Thanksgiving. But hold on just a second. Let me bring this clip up, and then we'll go over that, and then we'll call it a day. I just saw it. Where was it? Is it this one? Oh, yeah. Because this has to do with... So, real quick, before I get into this, we'll just to briefly go over the context at the beginning. The Democrats are already pissed now because there were statements that were given to the record from the whistleblowers who... were kind of, at least one of them, and probably all of them, were not so thrilled about the idea of giving their written testimony over to the Democrats, or their written statements over to the Democrats, because they know what they would do with them. They'd twist the words, they'd make it even worse. Now, they'd already sat for a closed hearing, and they had already been able to ask questions. They'd already been through a hearing that was, this is where sensitive information is discussed, where you can't discuss in public. But the point is that this has already kind of gone through that process. Yet, because there was something that was given to the Republicans that was asked by the whistleblowers not to be given to the Democrats. So that's the thing with whistleblowers. They have discretion to be able to say, like, I'm concerned about my testimony being used in a way that would be misleading in this sort of time, especially because of the fact that this is a government agency that I am making accusations against. I don't want this to be shared with the other the minority in Congress, and so that will be accommodated for. The Democrats don't like that in this situation. I guarantee you, if the shoe was on the other foot, they would be going to bat, as viciously as possible to make sure that they came up with every reason under the sun why there's no reason they have to hand it over to the Republicans. But because this was the request of particularly Marcus Allen in this case, they are throwing a big temper tantrum and not letting it go throughout the entire hearing because I guess there's some sort of important magical information in there that they believe is like going to be some smoking gun, and that's why they're hiding. That's why Democrats are so screwed up. They think when they're trying to guess at the motives of conservatives, they still are thinking like Democrats. They're thinking about what they would do. They're not thinking about what Republicans would do. And that's why it's so much easier for Republicans to understand Democrat thinking than vice versa. And I've talked about that before. It's because of their inability to even think like conservatives think at all, because they have this incredibly ridiculous belief about what conservatives actually believe. And most of it is just born out of this ridiculous sort of fear that is completely unfounded and totally untrue, but they've convinced themselves it's true and that it's very, very scary. This is terrible. So they can't remove themselves from the situation long enough to think about it rationally and think about why. Well, maybe it has to do with the way I've been treating these people for this whole time they've come forward, and I've treated them like criminals. I've treated them like they're already guilty. I've treated them like, there's not even a need to have any kind of proceedings at all. If they're making accusations about my precious FBI that works for the Biden administration, then of course they're liars. And it's just, so anyway, that's what this first part's about. Sorry I went over that. Let's get to it now. Here we go.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I think you were going to indulge the Congresswoman from Florida and her point of inquiry.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that.
You're making a point of order?
No, I'm asking you a question.
Okay.
A point of inquiry.
Okay.
It's my understanding that the minority in this committee under the rules is entitled to the same testimony, information, documents that the majority is entitled to. So, I mean, I'm not aware that you're able to withhold information from the minority that we would need to use to prepare for.
When it comes to whistleblowers, you're not. And I would just remind the committee, remind everyone. Look, when it comes to whistleblowers, you are not.
That's not right.
It's shocking that the
That
gentleman.
is not right.
It's shocking
and in
that
fact,
the gentleman.
You talk so much about the whistleblower and the impeachment.
It's shocking that the gentleman from New York
all of
would
the
state
information
that
we had.
when you were part of an investigation
we gave you all
with an anonymous
of the information
whistleblower.
You had. We have.
Chairman, these individuals
Mr. Chairman,
haven't
I
been
can't hear
declared
5 people at once without a regular order.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair recognizes
I'm inquiring, and I was not.
And I've told you that when it comes to whistleblowers, you are not entitled to it. That's
These
at the discretion of Mr. Allen.
Mr. Chairman, these individuals have been determined
he has
not to be
agreed to that.
whistleblowers. These are not whistleblowers. They've been determined by the agency
either.
not to be whistleblowers. Are you deciding that they're whistleblowers?
Yes, the law decides. Did you not listen to Mr. Levitt's testimony? Did you not read the law? The
His
law
attorney
decides
is
that they are
asserting-
whistleblowers.
his attorney
the
is
chair
asserting that
recognizes
they are
the gentlelady
whistleblowers.
from
The
New
law
York.
has not
The
determined
gentlelady
that
from
they
New
are
York has been
whistleblowers.
recognized.
The law has not determined they are whistleblowers. His attorney is just asserting that.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
So here we
Thank
go.
you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move quickly through a couple different questions. We established earlier credibility matters, certainly for witnesses who appear before us. Mr. Boyle, do you know who Kash Patel is?
I do.
Look at
Have you
how he
received any
starts off
money from
immediately.
Kash Patel or his organization?
I have.
When you previously met with the majority members and/or majority staff of this committee, was Kash Patel present for that?
Just look at this scumbag. What a piece of shit.
That meeting?
No.
To your knowledge, has Kash Patel ever spoken to the committee members on your behalf?
He's so
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of? Was anyone present for your previous meetings with committee members and staff on the majority that were not members of this committee or staff of this committee?
My counsel.
Your counsel? Anyone else?
I don't think so. No.
Is Kash Patel helping you finance your counsel?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Mr. Friend, what about you? Do you know Kash Patel as well?
Yes.
And did you receive any money from Kash Patel?
Yes, he gave me a donation last November.
A donation?
Yes.
Are you a charitable organization?
I was an unpaid, indefinitely suspended man trying to feed his family, and reached out to me and said he wanted to give me a donation.
Did he have any? Was he present for any of your meetings with committee members or staff?
He's so sure.
And how many times did you meet with the committee members or staff prior to your transcribed interview?
I never met with them prior to my transcript.
Did you speak to them on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so you spoke to them on the phone?
Yes, I spoke to them on the phone, corresponded.
Did you provide documents?
Yes, I gave them my written declaration.
Did they ask you whether they could share that with the minority?
I think we kind of get the...
I don't know. At the time, I don't believe they were actually in the majority.
Did they ask you whether they could share the documents?
I don't remember if
it was his written statement.
I want to focus a little bit on
he's so obsessed with this.
That SWAT case that you mentioned, Mr. Friend.
Oh, and this is a joke.
Where the SWAT team was used to make an arrest of someone associated with the domestic violent extremist group. That was not your case?
That was a case that was within my office. The Joint Terrorism Task Force sort of ran all the cases together.
Okay. Well, did you work on that case?
My name is on it. I did not perform work for it.
Got it. And what evidence
Real quick, Steve Friend is the guy who was working on the child sexual abuse materials cases, CSAM cases, and he clarified in this hearing, it's not here, but he clarified in the hearing that he was moved to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. That's what they're talking about. And they just don't seem to get what he's trying to say. What he's trying to say is he was moved to that task force to bolster their numbers, but they basically didn't have enough work for him. So he was still working on CSAM material, but he put his name on everything that had to do with the Joint Terrorism Task Force because he technically was still a member of that team, but it was only to bolster the numbers because it's similarly what they did with people that were gone after on January 6th from, whatever they were there for, even if they just were in the area and were questioned by FBI. They treated all those cases as individual domestic terrorism cases. Now, normally what the FBI would do is they would include January 6th itself as one event, and that all the people that were questioned would be part of that one event. Like September 11th would be another example. They wouldn't go to every single person that was involved in anything that had to do with September 11th and hold those as individual cases. They would make that all a September 11th case. Now, in this case, though, with January 6th, what they did was they used this idea that they all were individual cases, and the reason was so that they could say that these were all different cases of domestic extremism, domestic extremist terrorism, or whatever the term they use for it, domestic violent extremist bullshit, and have those all be separate cases, so it looks like there's this huge domestic terror threat. And in reality, it's a bunch of people that were on the lawn on January 6th, as opposed to, what you normally would think of when you think of domestic terrorism. And that's the point he's making by saying that they moved me into this unit to make it seem like we needed all these agents. I was still working CSAM cases, which we needed way more We need way more agents on than the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So anyway, I just had to get that out because this is such a ridiculous stretch. Anyway, let's go.
Did you have that this defendant had offered to surrender to the FBI?
The evidence I had was in his conversations with the individuals from my office who he spoke to, he said that he would cooperate.
So he said he would cooperate with the FBI, but he never told you that he would surrender to an arrest. Those are two different things, you agree, right?
No, I wouldn't. If somebody told me that if you need anything from me, just let me know, I'll cooperate, I would interpret that to mean I could reach out to them if I had a criminal charge.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. All right, that's certainly not my experience.
Well, you're a jackass.
Mr. Allen,
I don't believe you. How often did people
you passed
say they're gonna
around
turn themselves in and
information
just,
to other members of the FBI related to January 6th, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you were admonished by your supervisor not to do that, is that right?
I was not, sir.
You were not. So when it says here in the FBI's letter to Mr. Jorman of yesterday that your supervisor admonished you to stop circulating these materials on multiple occasions, you're saying right now that the FBI is lying to this committee?
That statement that they wrote is inaccurate.
Okay. Did you write to your colleagues to, quote, exercise extreme caution and discretion in pursuit of any investigative inquiries or leads pertaining to the events of January 6th?
Yes, I corresponded with my teammate.
Did you write that?
Yes, I wrote those words in the correspondence.
And that was
that's what he's
that was after you had been
be.
admonished not to send information about January 6th,
That's
right?
the information
I was
about
not
January
admonished
6th.
to not send information.
But you do agree that your personal opinion should not influence your official duties, don't
He's
you?
telling people to be
No,
careful.
you
This
should
is
be
a
objective
sensitive
and
case.
analytical in all the decisions and information.
No, that was my question. Your personal views should not influence
It's
your
not about
official
a personal
duties.
view.
No, you should be objective in doing the conduct of your job.
And now, Mr. Friend and Mr. O'Boyle, I don't have much time, but you agree that you were field agents, correct?
Correct.
And you understand chain of command, do you not, Mr. O'Boyle?
I do.
Right. So that if you make a suggestion to a supervisor and your supervisor overrules you, that's the nature of the business, isn't it?
Not if it's a violation of a law.
And you make decisions about whether grand jury subpoenas should be served or not as a field agent of the FBI?
Time the gentleman is
If I have a
expired.
reasonable belief, I can make a protected disclosure, which is what I've done.
Exactly.
But do you think you make those
Time the gentleman is
decisions?
expired.
What a fucking
Gentleman yields
jackass.
back to
God,
recognize
that-
himself.
that's
Mr.
why I
O'Boyle,
hate this
why do
guy,
you
I
think
swear.
they came down on you so darn hard?
Now, let's get a little
Deep
bit
down, what do you
sanity
think
in
their
here.
motivation is?
Jesus Christ.
I think they want to, the agency
Look
as
how
a whole
pissed he
wants
is.
to
He is so...
get rid of people who simply just don't toe the line that they want. They don't want critical thinkers. They don't want people who raise valid questions to their chain of command.
They want to send a message, don't they?
Absolutely.
They want to make you an example, don't they?
Yes.
And they don't care. They want to send that message so hard, so strong, they don't care that you served 6 years in the Army, member of the 101st Airborne, took enemy fire, was selected for a special new unit they were putting in Quantico. They wanted to send such a message that they said, if we can get this guy, we can get this guy to be quiet, we can get everybody to be quiet. That's what they were doing, wasn't it?
Yes, sir, especially since I had just had a baby who was 2 weeks old, and we had just sold our house.
Just to put the emphasis on it, they said, we're going to do it the day he arrives. The day we've worked with him, we selected him, he's done a great job in the FBI, he served our country, took an oath to the Constitution, took an oath to defend this country. He's going to move, we're going to send all his stuff in this van to this moving. We're going to do that. When the day he arrives, we're going to suspend him. We're not going to let his family get their belongings. We're not going to let him get his clothes for his kids, his winter coats for his children. We're going to send a message. And they did. They suspended you. They took your pay. They don't let you get health insurance. They made life miserable for you to send a message. Because you know what? You reported on the first big screw up they had in this administration. The first big one. You reported to us as a whistleblower about the school board's issue.
Boom.
The Biden administration, they thought this was going to be a win for them politically. They thought it was going to make Terry McAuliffe governor of Virginia. Backfired on him. And you reported.
Gotta just say
would
real
it surprise you, Mr. O'Boyle, to know that the FBI told us they looked at 25...
What he's referring to is Terry McAuliffe was just before the election for Virginia governor with Glenn Youngkin, there was a debate, I think, that a question was asked for both candidates. Do you think parents should have more of a say in their education than the teachers and administrators, or do you think it should be equal, or do you think it should be more one or the other? And Terry McAuliffe, with this new, this new idea and all the propaganda of these domestic extremists who were going to school board meetings and terrorizing local officials, he thought saying that, no, of course, parents should be working directly with the school boards to reach some sort of conclusion that best serves the child. No, the parents have ultimate say. That's how parenting works. Sorry, your little plan's not going to work, and it didn't, and that's exactly what happened in the election. It did backfire on them, and Glenn Youngkin won the election. So, yeah, this whole plan, I don't know if that wasn't, I don't think, the predicate for why they started the investigations, but the point is that was another thing that they thought was going to be beneficial to them, was that if they could keep this narrative going and use the FBI to investigate all these cases of extremists at school board meetings, then they could present this case, and it would be a winning issue for them if they were presented in these debates, and Terry McAuliffe could be the governor, and they'd be all happy and excited with the case. But Glenn Youngkin won, and it's turned out he's been one of the best governors in the country as of late, and really, especially on the school board issue, anything related to schooling of children in the United States, he's been really a champion for. And that's what that's referring to. I'm sorry, I just had to stop right there and make mention of that. And Merrick Garland and his memo about the disturbing spike in cases of violence and threats of violence and harassment of school board officials has been increasing as of late. It's all bullshit. It was all just to get this narrative started that there's this big threat from parents. So anyway, let's get back to this.
Parents who were reported on this snitch line that was set up with this memorandum from the Attorney General. They looked at 25 parents. How many do you think of them were actually ever investigated and prosecuted? How many think were prosecuted, Mr. O'Boyle?
If I had to guess, I'd say 0.
0.
Bing, bing.
0. And you came to us because you say this is wrong. This is wrong to set up some federal snitch line, some neighbor calling in because they don't like their neighbor's politics, reporting to the FBI, go investigate these parents. They said, we got to get this guy. We got to get Garrett O'Boyle because you had the courage to step forward. And it's not just with this issue, because we have the memorandum from the Richmond field office about Catholics, right? Yeah. If you're pro-life, pro-family, and you're Catholic, look out. The FBI wanted to put people inside the church, inside the parish, to spy on fellow citizens. Does that surprise you, Mr. O'Boyle, that that actually happened in the Richmond field office?
It doesn't, not anymore.
Scary. And you know that memorandum, by the way? It was signed off by 5 people in that office. One of them was the chief division counsel, a lawyer who supposedly went to law school and probably had a course on the Constitution, signed off on that memorandum. Scary stuff. Scary stuff. Mr. Allen, you served 20 years. You had a security clearance for 20 years. You served our country as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Honorably discharged?
Yes, sir.
Won medals from the Marine Corps?
Yes, sir.
And they came after you too, didn't they? And you simply did. Mr. Goldman just asked you a few questions. You were simply doing your job. Your job as an analyst is to compile information, open source information, present that to your colleagues so they're fully informed about the case. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you did that job, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You followed your oath, right?
Yes, sir.
You adhered to the rule of law.
Correct, sir.
You were consistent with the Constitution, just like the oath you took when you signed both as serve our country in the military and at the FBI.
Yes, sir.
And you did the same thing, didn't you, Mr. Friend?
Yes, sir.
And yet you felt the full weight of the federal government come down on you guys. And of course, they timed it perfectly. They sent a letter to us yesterday. We knew they would. We knew it was going to happen that way. And as Mr. Boyle said earlier, he's getting his hearing tomorrow, right, Mr. Boyle?
That's when they tried to schedule it. We've not heard back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your service to the country. Mr. Bishop was right. The poise, the way you've handled yourself, the gentleman way you've handled yourself here, the way you've served our country, it does not go unnoticed. The American people appreciate what you've done for our country and what you are doing for our country. God bless you. I yield back.
I'll go ahead and cut it there. That's where it kind of goes backwards. But anyway, maybe you can kind of get the idea why this is something that always gets me a little animated, because that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. When you look at the two side by side, there's this intense idea on the left that's like, I'm gonna nail it. I got some gotcha questions. I'm ready for it. And they get there, and it's like almost every time it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. They just get this blank look, like, what? Because they have these big ideas in their head. Now, when it goes over to the Republican side, they have something that's usually been discussed with them, and you can see that the witnesses go, well, that's actually that, or they, they just kind of mumble and stammer before they actually get to the answer. And so there's a huge difference, and it's just like when you hear those two things contrasted, and it's even worse than that, because this hearing ended with such a memorable line. Garrett O'Boyle was asked if you had someone that you knew who was in the FBI and felt they needed to come forward with similar allegations and as you did, be a whistleblower. What would you tell them? His answer is, first, I would tell them to pray and think about it long and hard, and I would tell them afterwards, I can deliver this to people in Congress for you, to not get you involved, or if you think you should handle it, then you can come and deliver it on your own, and I can put you in contact with them. But I would highly recommend you not. And the congressman's kind of like, wow, you would actually want to make sure that you protected someone that had something to say, that was another bit of information about this FBI and how they've been so out of line. How does that serve the cause of justice? And he says it doesn't, but the FBI will crush you. This government will crush you. That was his exact words. And it's like all three of us up here are proof of that. And he said a very sobering way to end the meeting. And it was just, that was like that last statement. You could hear a pin drop in that hearing room, because it's like you could tell by the way, like Jim Jordan said, their poise, their behavior, their tone, their composure that they keep throughout the hearing, while the Democrats are flailing around going angry about everything. It's two completely different demeanors, and yeah, they're trained to be more disciplined, but I think it's much more than that. This is, you can tell how devastated they are by the way they speak about this. Even on Patrick Bet-David, where they're a little bit more loose, they're a little bit more able to open up, and they don't feel so much pressure because they're in front of a few people that are just talking on a podcast. They're not in front of Congress, but their demeanor is still, there's this sense of deep sort of anguish and sadness that you can kind of tell. And they're just discussing exactly what the facts are, and that's about it. But they are able to go into a little bit more detail about personal details, because it's not like, they can talk about their own faith without being accused of doing this because they're religious extremists or something. Who knows? But anyway, I've already gone way over, so I'll end it there. Man, I am really going to have to start extending these, because we're going to end up easily. We did break 2 hours today, including pre-stream, of course. But I'll try to start shortening these down a little bit more. Maybe get started on our first subject first a little bit faster or whatever. But But either way, thanks so much for watching, you guys. Really appreciate it. It's Wednesday, so tomorrow, Thursday, the 28th. Yeah, that's anyway, since this is the last episode before, I think I'll just let you guys know Happy Thanksgiving from Frame Advantage. And thank you guys so much for watching. I've been watching the viewer count number go up, and I got to say, once again, it's very much appreciated. It's seeming like this is starting to really reach more people, and I'm very, very happy about that. So hopefully I can kind of pick up the pace as we get into the probably when we get into the new year. It'll really be able to hit a point where I can start stretching my legs out and really running forward a little faster with some of the things I'd like to ideas I'd like to try and things I'd like to do. But for now, I'm just surprised that I've gotten such a good response at this as of yet. So I just wanted to thank you guys specifically. I really, really do appreciate all of you guys that have come out to check out the show. And if it wasn't for you even and you didn't watch anymore, thank you as well. Anybody that checked out the show, I very much appreciate it. Thanks for giving it a shot. If you have been watching and still here, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I won't be on tomorrow, like I said, so I will be back on Friday, and I'll probably do Friday and Saturday. I don't know about Friday exactly because, like I said, I don't really do the Black Friday thing, but there's going to be some things going on I'm going to have to do, and running out on that day, you can be going a couple blocks and it'll take like 2 hours. Little exaggeration, but still, I mean, you never know. Like, traffic is crazy. People out are crazy. It gets nuts. So I'll try to make it on and give it as much time as I can. But just so you know, Fridays might be a little tumultuous, so I can't say for sure exactly how long I'll do or when I'll be on. But I'll try to be on as soon as I can, as far as the time I'm normally going to be on. And so for everybody else that is getting ready, thank you for watching. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a fantastic holiday. And I'll see you guys on Friday. Until then, my name's Corey Dean. Thank you so much for watching Frame Advantage. I will see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves and have a good one. Peace.
Now, I can't read it. There's no words on it. Okay. Sure. There's no words there. To play us out. What does that mean? To play us out. What is? I don't know what that means. To play us out. What does that mean?